today, Rodney. This is going to be an interesting topic on how companies can up their game when it comes to recruiting top supply chain talent. And first, can you provide a brief background of yourself?
Absolutely, Dustin. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this interview. So I've been in recruiting for over 20 years. The last 15 plus years have been in end-to-end supply chain. And I'd say half the time I have spent on the corporate side working for some pretty large corporations that include the Coca-Cola Company, Kimberly-Clark, the Home Depot, Cummins, PwC. Personally have filled over 1,000 professional to executive level supply chain positions across the country. Everything from sourcing, procurement to logistics, transportation, warehousing. Have done quite a bit in the manufacturing sector as well, and customer service and so forth. So I've got a pretty broad background in supply chain recruitment. It's I would say runs pretty deep and pretty broad, and look forward to speaking to how companies can improve how they go about sourcing and recruiting top supply chain talent.
Thanks. Can you first tell us, where do you find talent?
Sure, that's a great question, and we, over the years, we have been developing a database of candidates. We've put a lot of investment into what I would call internet marketing. So everything from developing a robust website that attracts candidates. We have a blog. I actually serve as the career coach for APIC, so I put together a lot of content for them, webinars, white papers on everything, every aspect of supply chain career development. And so we get a lot of good referrals through those efforts. We belong to the major supply chain associations. We definitely tap into the associations, the membership directories, getting out and about with association chapter meetings and so forth. We don't do a lot of advertising. We typically will develop a customized sourcing strategy for every single search that we accept, and that includes developing a target list of companies, target industries that we can tap into. So once we put that list together, it's basically just having an omni-channel approach to reaching out to these candidates, whether it's through email, phone, text, connecting on LinkedIn, and so forth. So those are kind of the primary sources that we use, and then we also pay for some databases through Salesforce.com and other tools. So I like to use the word omni-channel. That's a pretty popular term in the supply chain logistics arena. We have the same concept when it comes to sourcing talent. And I think companies need to really start to think outside of the box. You can't just get away with posting positions and sitting back and waiting for candidates to come to you. You absolutely need to put together a sourcing strategy that includes a lot of different channels on how you can, reach out, network with people, and so forth.
And what challenges have you seen with talent acquisition?
I have seen a lot of challenges. I've seen a lot of companies make a lot of the same mistakes. So I like to look at things from a people, process, and systems perspective. You have to really have a good strategy and a good program in place. It's imperative that you understand, from an overall business perspective, where have we been, where are we at now, where are we trying to go as it relates to hiring, and putting together a plan in partnership with the business leaders and HR leaders. So you have to kind of set that baseline. How many, what's our growth trajectory? What's our retention? What kind of attrition do we have? And then you can kind of put together that baseline. And then from there, making sure you have the right resources in place. So when I say resources, that comes down to having very, very good people when it comes to sourcers and recruiters that can really drive the process. If I was to hire someone, in supply chain recruiting, I would definitely want someone that has a strong network that understands supply chain, because obviously, it's a very complex field. And I think it definitely helps to understand the terminology, and to be able to size up candidates and assess candidates, you really need to understand, all aspects of supply chain. So it starts with getting really good talented people. Don't, you get what you pay for. And I would also emphasize the process too. You want to have a streamlined recruitment and hiring process. The less touch points, the better, because the more touch points you have, the more things that can fall through the cracks. You can create a pretty frustrating candidate experience that, instead of attracts candidates, could deter candidates. So you want to streamline it and make it exciting. Make sure that you're not just asking the candidate questions. You need to be selling the opportunity as well, because right now it is a candidate-driven market with supply chain and the talent gaps that we have. And then on the system side, it's extremely important to have a robust system. Again, the less clicks, the better. I've worked with some pretty awful recruitment systems, especially in my corporate days. So you want to put in some really good technology. You'll definitely get that return back on the investment. So think top level people, streamlined process, and a very robust recruitment system. And in addition to that, paying for tools like the LinkedIn Recruiter package, which we subscribe to here, and any other databases that you can get your hands on. And that also includes participating in supply chain associations, being active members, getting out into the local chapters and whatnot. So I see companies making these mistakes with just having, too big of a process, too many touch points, too many bottlenecks, inadequate systems, and then especially on the people side, not having good enough talent and not having enough talent. They like to think, do more with less, and you really just can't afford to take that chance, because if you can't get enough people in your supply chain and the operations and so forth, you're going to have customer service issues, and that's going to be a lot more money down the road in losses in terms of revenue and productivity. So it's a big challenge, and if you can fix those areas, the companies that invest into their talent acquisition, get leadership involvement, even from the CEO down, have good referral programs. Those are the companies that do very well and don't have any problems.
And can you share some mistakes that you've seen companies making?
Absolutely. I can even give you some examples. I won't name any company names, but I think when you look at supply chain and compare it to other corporate functions, you've got HR, you've got finance, you've got IT, sales, marketing, and so forth. A lot of people treat supply chain. They just, some of the HR leaders may not understand how complex it can get. And a good example is, if you're working in HR, you might have a handful of profiles. The majority of those positions are going to be based in the corporate office, whereas supply chain, at least from my experience with some of these large corporations, I could easily have 30, 40 openings at any given time. Every single job title is different. The job levels are different. And a lot of these positions are out in the operations all over the country. So you have that geographical complexity on top of the functional complexity, and in a very scarce talent market. So if you don't put enough resources to where you can be proactively sourcing candidates, what happens is you are reactive, and you're basically, a lot of things are going to fall through the cracks. You're not going to have enough time to go out and source candidates. You're going to be funneling candidates that come in through job posting. I mean, I'm a prime example. I lived this world for several years, and I never could get the help that I needed. I was able to get it done, but it took a lot of extra hours and overtime to get it done. So get the right people in place. That is priority number one. Go find the best supply chain recruiter that you can find. Many companies just don't do that. They think they can hand it over to anyone, and it takes time to develop the network and understanding of what supply chain is, again, because it is very complex. So the people side, that's where I see mistakes. I would also add to that, we talked about the process a minute ago. Just adding too many touch points to the process. I've seen companies make the mistake of asking a recruiter to do everything from scheduling interviews to walking candidates around from interview room to interview room. And that just sucks a lot of time away when the recruiter should be focused on value added work, going out and finding candidates and getting them into the process. So, investing in having a staffing coordinator or some kind of administrative support, let the recruiter focus his or her time on developing relationships with clients as well as candidates, and especially going out and sourcing candidates. So the organizational structure, the process side, that seems to be where a lot of companies make mistakes. And then on the system side, I've worked with my fair share of awful, horrific systems where you have to, you just have click through a lot of screens, do a lot of data entry. Some of these systems are extremely outdated. They're not connected to social media. So I think if, you need to go in and always evaluate from a technology and systems perspective, what is the best package out there, because that can absolutely give you a competitive advantage.
Thanks. And my last question is, do you have any suggestions for improving the recruitment program?
Absolutely. It truly needs to start, with the things we've talked about. Obviously, I've emphasized that quite a bit on the people, process, and system side. That's just one aspect. I think investing into sourcing tools, databases, CRM systems, give the recruiter as many tools as possible for them to go out and source talent. Invest into these supply chain conferences as well. Send recruiters out to APIC, CSCMP, and other global supply chain meetings, because getting out and about, building relationships, people that you can lean on to get leads and referrals from. I would say the biggest source of hires is candidate referrals. So it's imperative to put together a robust referral program that employees can participate in. And I think that needs to be driven from the CEO down. Getting employees active, making sure they understand what kind of openings exist within the various departments, but also getting them to be proactive by, with social media. It's pretty easy with a click of a few buttons to share positions out on your LinkedIn feed, Twitter, and whatnot. So I think it's important to do that, and even to provide an incentive. Maybe it's a trip to the Bahamas for a week, or some kind of a cash incentive for the person that generates the most referrals and hires. That's a great way to get involvement.
Well, thank you, Rodney, for sharing today on this topic.
Thank you, Dustin. Thank you so much for your time.
And I look forward to staying in touch. And if you have updates for the supply chain community in the future, that would be very interesting.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to participate and help in any way I can.
Thanks.